I always learn something when we're talking. This is how I actually, how I have uh, allowed myself over time to become someone who writes screenplays. Because I remember when I started writing on a napkin and trying to find a writer to write my scripts. And actually, I don't even think I had a napkin. I sat down with a script writer, and they said, "Oh, you want to do?" They said, "Well, why don't you write it on a napkin?" And you know, and then I'm going to the bathroom, and I was in a Tim Hortons coffee spot, and I was rapidly writing down what I was trying to conceptualize for them. And then they came back and said, "Well, you know, my plate's kind of full, but I do know some writer friends. Maybe if you just, you know, write a few more pages so you can flesh that out a bit, so you can give it to them." And I think they were playing a trick on me because I wound up writing 10 pages and then 60 pages, and then realizing, wait a minute, somebody's goaded me into starting here. But it wasn't obviously going to be a great first draft, and I got beaten up quite a bit for that. But over the years, as I was kind of taking the beatings, and then later on, when you and I came in contact, yeah, I just, you know, hearing and absorbing those processes that you've talked about, and another producer named Jane Beliveau, who kind of also was those, you know, keeping yourself kind of open to hearing what people's approaches are, you know, and what their guidance is, and not kind of using your ego to fence things off, like we were talking about before, has helped me grow a lot. But I mean, still, like I say, as I've even had this dialogue, there's just constantly stuff that when we're talking, I'll learn from what you're saying, which I think, oh, I got to do that next time I sit down to write something.
Yeah, good luck. Because it's really difficult. It's not because it's you, it's because the whole thing is really, really difficult. Quite
Yeah,
a lot. What are you working on at the moment? Are you doing anything? Can I ask?
well, I just launched my one of my old books on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was something that I was selling digitally just through a website years ago. I kind of let it die off, and I've been wanting to kind of reorient everything onto a kind of cohesive website platform, so that everyone can kind of get redirected to Amazon for the books. If there
Yeah.
are film projects in development, then the objective was to kind of try and, you know, put those in a place where it's more concise. And
Yeah.
yeah, so the two elements of my life, which have been in the fitness industry and in the film industry, you know, have been kind of like my desk, just everything kind of everywhere.
Hmm.
And so the last few weeks, I've been just working to consolidate that. I'm going to be working with some web development people to kind of get the two segments kind of laid out on a website in a more easy to kind of navigate situation. And that way, if people are trying to find me through the film side of things, they can. And what I'm doing with the M2M project idea, and sort of nurturing along things. There are some investment hunters that are looking for. They've actually found some money for some of the projects, but the key then is, who do you put into the team that's developing the project to make that interested money you want to actually put the money on the table. You know, they might like the
Hmm.
script, but they may be struggling with whether or not they trust the team. So you got to get a team that kind of instills that trust. So that's why I've wanted to kind of consolidate everything and put it in a position where it's
Yeah.
easier for people to navigate.
I wanted to ask you when you have a script that's ready to go ish, and you approach the producers with this idea, where does it normally fall apart?
Um, well, it's changed a little bit over time, and I've gone through, as you know, because we've talked about it, past so many different option deals and things like that. Um, Sometimes the bigger the scale of the project, the more the money is the issue. So I have, you know, some of the stuff has been really easy to get in the door and gain interest,
Hmm.
because I find with you know, Red Rock, people got super excited about that on many different occasions, and it just boils down to money, and and even when you get in the room for the money, then it comes down to, well, who is this guy, and what has he done? And so it becomes a game of who you know a little bit as well.
Okay.
And so that domino plays into it. I find with the some of the other ones, that the roadblock tends to be, you know, if you're lucky enough to find someone who knows how to kind of plug into investors, and I have been, which is great. The difficult part then is building the right team, because it all becomes about trust in who's in the film, whether it's the producers that are playing a part, or because sometimes you have a producer who's really enthusiastic but doesn't have a lot of experience, and they become a liability because everyone's saying, why is that person on the project? You know, they sound enthusiastic, but do they know anyone? Do they have money? Do they, you know? So and then maybe you
Yeah.
have somebody who is good as a director, but you can't get the right, you know, leverageable, you know, supporting actor or whatever. So that becomes the ball where, you know, you're trying to get that in order, and then your investor drops out. And then you've got a few people who are interested, but by the time you find another investor, one of those people disappears again. So
It's
that gets to be the challenge.
it must be incredibly difficult to get everybody together to line up all your horses and then go see the investors and say it's all there, it's all ready to go. We just need a check and then boof, we're off.
Yeah,
Um, I've no idea how incredibly difficult that must be.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're dealing with people shit, aren't you?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger your network is, and the more people you connect with, and that was part of why I wanted to do this, is just because
Yeah.
there are people who have, if you can help them, you know, there's a kind of an energy that kind of returns back. You know,
Mhm,
maybe, you know,
mhm.
plugging
Yeah.
into your network and talking to people who are very talented, will introduce them to someone else, and they'll go off and do something with them, and that's great. But because you're making those connections and expanding that network, and you're part of that, when you raise your hand and say, "Hey, I got something over here," you got more people who have a lot of skill that are willing to say, "Well, let's collectively see what we can do," you know, and you can find the right people in a more likely way in that fashion.
Yeah.
If you bobbled up in your office like I have been in the past and years past, you're not connecting with a lot of people in the business. And it really is a, you know, who you know business that way. You know, it doesn't have to be high level. You just have to get to know people who are interested and have some skills, and they begin to rally, you know, once you stay plugged in.
I mean, I do it because I like talking to you. It's not a network thing.
No, same.
Genuinely.
That's right. Yeah.
So you don't have any scripts on the go? You don't have anything
Um,
planned?
Nothing that I'm currently writing. There are more episodes of the miniseries concept, that Red Rock that I alluded to, that
Yeah.
to be fleshed out. But yeah, no, right now I recently finished consulting on a script that another writer had done in California, and it was one of those ideas that had some potential in terms of concept, and through a 6-month process, I mean, he kind of implemented all of my notes, not always, as is the case, not always taking all of them, but we did that back and forth process, and he was able to get that optioned after we went through that a
Oh,
couple times. So that was successful, and I think it looks like an exciting film, and I really enjoyed that process too, just being the kind of the backseat driver, so to speak, and saying, you know, this is what I'm seeing here, and kind of making suggestions on how to kind of tighten scenes. And that was something that I really enjoyed.